Welcome to today's Explainer. We are going to be diving headfirst into the surprisingly fascinating world of family enterprises. We're using the deep insights of Dr. Maurizio Bragagni, specifically from his working draft, Family Business, the Art and Science of Making the Impossible Possible. In it, he breaks down exactly how these unique, deeply personal organizations survive, thrive, and somehow keep innovating across generations.
Okay, let's kick things off with a number that is just staggering. 80%. Family businesses actually account for a massive 80% of global GDP. So we're not talking about some small niche sector of the market here. This proves that the family business is literally the main engine of the entire world economic.
But to truly understand how to operate successfully in a family business today, we have to start by asking a pretty fundamental question. Where do these companies actually come from? How did this whole concept of the enterprise even originate?
To answer that, we're going to trace the evolution of the enterprise through 5 key stops. First, the roots of the family business. Then, the mathematics of complexity, followed by the 3 pillars of trust: patience, perseverance, and prayer. And finally, real culture versus wish culture. We'll be looking at both the macro structure of business and the micro journey of the individual within it.
So, let's jump straight into Section 1, Roots of the Family Business, Tracing the Bloodline of Commerce. We really need to look at the ancient historical roots that form the bedrock of corporate structure.
There's this beautiful bit of etymology behind the corporate jargon we use every single day. The word company literally began from the Latin phrase cum panes, which translates to share the same bread. It actually originated as families in early Christian communities breaking bread together. They were bound by shared values, shared trust, and shared meals. Back then, the family literally was the company.
And you can clearly see this chronological evolution of commerce. In Roman times, companies as we know them just didn't exist. Early enterprises were run by highly skilled slaves who managed commercial interests for wealthy citizens, taking on the liability while operating under the family name. Fast forward to medieval Italy, and you see strategic marriages forming these vast business alliances to protect wealth. Think of the powerful Bardi banking family. They provided the credit that funded global exploration, even the voyages of Christopher Columbus. These ancient models laid the exact groundwork for the modern corporate structures we all work in today.
But as businesses grow across these generations, things get incredibly complicated. Which brings us to our second section, the mathematics of complexity, or what happens when blood meets the boardroom.
Dr. Bragagni actually gives us a precise mathematical formula to understand the structural risk within a family enterprise. It's brilliant in its simplicity. To find your complexity, you take the number of directors, multiply it by the number of shareholders, and then multiply that result by the number of generations active in the business.
Let's look at how fast this scales using his own family's business as an example.
So, you take 5 directors, multiply them by 7 shareholders, which equals 35. Then, factor in the 2 generations that are currently active. Multiply that 35 by 2, and boom, it instantly creates a complexity score of 70. Just think about your own workplace for a second. How high is your complexity score getting? The crucial takeaway here is that managing a family business isn't just about managing a product. It is about managing an exponentially growing web of human relationships.
Now, to manage that immense structural complexity without the whole business collapsing under its own weight, you need absolute trust. And this brings us to Section 3, the 3 pillars of trust, which form a totally non-negotiable foundation.
Those 3 pillars are authority, integrity, and competence. The thing to remember is that true loyalty to a family company isn't just blindly saying yes to the boss to avoid a fight. True loyalty requires you to actively uphold these 3 pillars, remaining loyal to the truth and the best interests of the company above everything else.
Let me give you a perfect example of a failure of integrity. Bragagni tells this crazy story about a web developer he hired for a charity project. They were testing the new website, and the developer sat there and watched his own app crash live on the screen. Yet he stubbornly sat there, claiming it was just a minor glitch and working perfectly. Bragagni fired him on the spot. As he puts it, a man who does not recognize the truth and carries on offering false affirmations when faced with the evidence is a disgrace. You absolutely cannot build trust without acknowledging reality.
On the flip side, let's talk about authority. Authority doesn't require a fancy title. It requires respect. Bragagni proves this from his own life. For 10 years, he signed billion-dollar contracts worldwide with a business card that simply had his name on it, Dr. Maurizio Bragagni. He had no CEO title, no president title, no formal power of attorney. It just proves that true authority is earned in the field through competence and trust, not handed out via job titles.
So let's see how all this builds into actionable daily values. Welcome to Section 4, Patience, Perseverance, and Prayer, the 3 Ps of success.
Bragagni redefines these traditional terms in a highly practical way for the business world. Prayer in this context means making the right ask to the right person at the right time. Perseverance means staying focused on your goal and just keeping at it. And patience means actually giving the other party the time and space they need to respond. Business is a two-way street, right?
He actually draws on ancient biblical parables to prove these are foolproof business strategies. Take the persistent widow, a highly vulnerable woman in ancient times who outlasted a corrupt judge through sheer, unrelenting persistence until he finally granted her justice. Or the wedding at Cana, where a mother patiently persevered in making an ask of her son, Jesus, which prompted his first public miracle. These are timeless blueprints for overcoming seemingly impossible odds during any negotiation.
And this kind of perseverance totally applies to modern cultural adaptability too. Bragagni shares an incredible story about trying to break into the Chinese market. To win trust, his mentor took him to a Macau casino where they stayed up all night, gambling with £1,000, drinking champagne, and smoking cigars. Why on earth would they do that? To prove to the Chinese officials surveilling them that they were genuine, flesh-and-blood businessmen and not stoic government spies. It was a brilliant, highly unconventional test of perseverance and cultural agility.
All of this history, this complexity, and personal skill ultimately culminates in the most critical element of the enterprise. Section 5, Real Culture versus Wish Culture, the underwater mechanisms of a company.
Look at the stark contrast here. The wish culture is the shiny shop window. It's the marketing, the slick slogans. It's what the company desperately promotes to the outside world. But the real culture is the gritty underwater mechanism. It is dictated entirely by where the time and money are actually invested. If you really want to know a company's real culture, you just have to follow the cash and observe the daily behaviors.
When you have a healthy, authentic, real culture, it aligns everybody's goals. It binds the company together like glue. This is famously illustrated by the story of a NASA janitor in 1961. When President John F. Kennedy visited the facility and asked the man mopping the floor what he did, the janitor replied, "I'm helping put a man on the moon, sir." That is real culture in action, for sure. When every single person, from the top to the bottom, understands their part in the ultimate vision. But here's the catch. Bragagni points out that learning a company culture is a lot like visiting Alaska. You can look at a map, you can watch a cool documentary, you can read the entire corporate handbook, but you won't truly know it until you stand out there in the freezing wind. You have to experience it viscerally. If you want to know your own team's culture, you literally have to share time, share life, and learn it directly from the people working beside you.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder. If you are part of a family business, or frankly any enterprise, ask yourself, are you simply sitting on the shoulders of the giants who built it, comfortably looking at the view they provided? Or are you actively using those 3 Ps, patience, perseverance, and prayer, to shape its ultimate vision for the future?